Patti is a fourth-generation farmer growing up on a diverse crop Michigan farm founded in 1866. She has over 50 years of experience in agriculture, beef production, vegetable gardening, and forage production. Patti has traveled to agriculture operations in 45 of the lower 48 states and all of the lower provinces of Canada. In 2007, she joined the Hinsdale Public School as agriculture educator and FFA advisor. Patti is driven by a passion to provide a healthier, more resilient future for her son and future generations. A progressive leader and educator in Montana's farm to school and local food net movements, Patti is a leader in Montana's regenerative agriculture movement, having studied intensively with Dr. Elaine Ingham, Nicole Masters, Gabe Brown, and Dr. Jonathan Lundgren, among others. And just a personal note, I met Patti first when she was on the board of Arrow. And also every time we take the Amtrak from Shelby to Chicago, we pass by Hinsdale, and Patti's name's on the sign as the FFA advisor that you can see from the train. So welcome, Patti, and we'd love to hear what you have to say tonight.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I'm super excited to present this topic because I've discovered that we can make plants healthy enough to not have any, and I mean any pest. So I'm super excited. So I think I got a slide share here. I don't know how I'm going to share. Do you guys know? Oh, share screen.
Yeah, do you find it?
Yeah, just take me a second here to find the picture. Is it sharing a slideshow?
Not yet.
No.
I think you may need to click on something.
All right, let's see what's it need to do.
Once you find the right screen, there's a little blue button at the bottom that you have to click to actually share.
I thought I did that, but. Yeah, it's sharing it, but not the right window.
Yeah, I think you have to select an active window.
Ah, boy. Oh, and when I click back off of it, it goes away. How does that happen? Huh. As soon as I click back off of it, it goes back to that view.
Oh. Do you want to send it to me, Patti, and I can see if I can bring it up?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'll do that while we're visiting here.
Okay, you have my email. I'll put it in the chat box.
Okay. So while we're trying to get the technical bugs out here. Where did it go? There it is. We didn't rehearse, could you tell?
What's that?
I said we didn't rehearse.
Oh.
I've been off of Zoom for a few days, so. Oh, so funny.
So, Patti, we all know that the audio-visual has been the great equalizer since we had mimeographs. So
yeah.
It continues to be.
Yep. Okay, share. Send that to you. See if you can get that.
Okay, let's see what happens.
Take us there. So anyhow, when I've been studying John Kemp extensively. I think I know every word he said on the internet. And Dan Kitchendridge, which between the two of them, in the beginning, when I started hearing about that you could get plants healthy enough to have pests that I thought, like I've grown healthy plants most of my life. How could that be so? Because I've always had pests. Well, it finally dawned on me that maybe I haven't been growing healthy plants and that there was a lot more to it than what I thought. And so as I dug deeper into their knowledge and my greater understanding, I decided, well, I'm going to see if I can make this happen. And so I went ahead and got Dan Kittredge's with the Bionutrient Association's garden kit, which has the minerals that he believes, and I think John Kemp believes, is not available, plant available to the plants in most soils. And so I put that mineral out. And then he also had a nutrient. Can you go to full screen on that, Mark?
Let's see.
Just
I'm
go
not sure.
present up in that corner, right
Oh,
corner.
there?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, excellent.
There you go. Perfect. Okay, and you go next slide.
Okay, let's see if I can figure that out. that
Okay,
working?
I'll just click and it should go.
Did it not go?
Yeah.
I can't see what I'm showing.
Well, we can see it looks good.
Okay.
So this is a couple of the growing zones or some of the growing areas that I grow in. And Robin asked me to address mostly indoor growing. So that's what we're going to talk about mostly today. And the greenhouse on the lower left corner is the Sleeping Buffalo greenhouse, which is a 30 by 96 double sheeted greenhouse. It's got hot water in the floor if we want it, and 20 big beds. And then a small high tunnel at my house, and the other greenhouse in the lower corner is a passive solar. It's only a 16 by 20. So those are the areas that I was using to try to prove this idea. So go ahead, Mark. And so I put those minerals out this spring, which those minerals are just the minerals that support photosynthesis, right? So the theory is that if the plant, you can just click on it and move forward one, Mark.
Is it not moving?
Yep, that's good. There's some of the crew that I've learned from. Okay, that's good. There, you can stay there for a second. And so, yeah, you can just stop it from running. So I put the minerals out. The minerals are the minerals that the micronutrients that a plant needs to do photosynthesis. And so when I started understanding from John that we most plants are only performing somewhere between 20 and 40% of their photosynthesis abilities, I was just shocked at that. I'm like, really? Wow, look at the potential there is to be able to grow way more and way healthier food. So I'm like, I just bought into this idea. I'm like, I'm down. And so I got the kit from Dan Kittredge, and then it has a liquid of fish and all the micronutrients and everything that you put on weekly. It's just like you put a tablespoon in a bucket of water and pour it out on your plants. And so that's what I did. You can go ahead to the next slide.
It may take a little while to advance, I think.
And then you could put it out weekly. There's times that I didn't put it out, but every couple weeks. But it's a Sleeping Buffalo. I didn't put it out hardly at all this year. But that's also in the fourth year of this regenerative growing. And so the regenerative practices are to keep the soil covered and to reduce disturbances and to keep a life root in the ground as much as possible, and diversity. And so by doing that, this is the fourth year, it was amazing that what I could see as the plant health pyramid start to take place is at level 1, you can go ahead and mark until we get to the pyramid. on level 1, the plants are just starting to do photosynthesis well enough to not have aphids, because aphids have to have incomplete proteins to digest the plant. So the plant, when it has incomplete proteins, is actually calling the aphids in, and the aphids respond and they can eat the plant. Can you get it to move forward?
Did it move forward, Denny?
I should be able to just click on it.
Is it working now?
There you, yeah, that's just good.
Okay.
And then we'll go ahead at another slide, I think. Want to get to the pyramid. So the pyramid is at the, so you can stop right here, I guess, right there is good. Right there. Okay, so this is John Kemp's pyramid. So at level 1, the plant's finally doing complete photosynthesis. So up until that point, when the plant is calling in all kinds of pests and diseases and is not optimal, we're just not even where the plant's doing complete photosynthesis yet. Maybe it's lacking boron, or maybe it's lacking zinc or something, where the plant's not really doing, it does photosynthesis, but not doing it well. So once it starts doing it well, we're at level 1. Then when we get to level 2, those proteins change. And so in the real world, when in the Sleeping Buffalo greenhouse, the first year, we just went cold turkey into the regenerative organic. We didn't do anything for treating stuff in there. And within the first heat cycle of starting to get really hot weather, probably the middle of June, we had aphids. And we had aphids in every bed on every plant. And by July, we had aphids on top of aphids. You couldn't even tell one blossom from what it was, even there were so many aphids. And then all of a sudden, those aphids went away in a week, like almost overnight. And I'm like, wow, what caused that? Well, now knowing that what caused that is these plants change from incomplete proteins to complete proteins, and the aphids can't digest it. And so they just disappeared on top of the beneficial insects come in too. But it was just amazing that the aphids died. And so that was at level 2. So at level 3, the plants are producing excess. And so they put on fat, just like our calves put on fat when they start getting finished. These plants put on fat, and we see that as a waxy coat on their leaves. At level 4, it's doing everything that we want done, and it's just at the optimum, and nothing no pest can harm the plant, or diseases will will happen when we get to level 4 of plant health. Okay, go ahead, Mark. Next slides here. Okay, so this is just talk about level 1 and 2. And then at level 1 and 2, you can do that with just your micronutrients of supporting the plant to do photosynthesis really, really well. Levels 3 and 4 can't happen without a super healthy microbe community of microbes in your soil working with your plant to get that plant to be at the total optimum. Okay, you can go ahead and one, Mark. Okay, so here's an example of level 1 on the right side. This was a kale, red Russian kale plant. And you can see the older leaves had been kind of hit by, I don't know if it was flea beetles or moths, something had hit it. But the plant was able to get healthier, and then the new leaves coming in, the pest didn't mess with. And so the plant was able to grow through the life cycle of that pest. That pest now can't digest the plant when it could have on those older leaves. And our squash plant over here on the other side, that's one plant, that's the whole plant, right? So we have powdery mildew on the older leaf, and we have none on the new leaves, none, 0. That's because that plant is now doing higher level of photosynthesis and is starting to work with the microbe community to resist all the diseases. Now, why that plant even got powdery mildew was that for 2 weeks this summer, in the 1st of September, we didn't have any water in that greenhouse at the Sleeping Buffalo. So you can imagine that big a greenhouse full of plants, and I mean full of plants, huge plants with no water for 2 weeks and 90 degrees every day. So all the plants in there went into some sort of stress, right? And so as soon as these plants started stressing, the plants that are susceptible to powdery mildew got powdery mildew. That's where it is on these older leaves. But as soon as we was able to start watering again and get the plant back up to top photosynthesis, it came out of it. And now it resists powdery mildew completely. And it's on the same plant. You would think it would have went right rampant right through the whole plant, right? That's what it used to do in my garden, but it doesn't now because the plant's so healthy. You can go ahead, next one. Okay, so some things that we look for, these are just for the farmer and gardener or anybody else that wants to grow healthy plants. These are things you're going to look for. These are cues of, am I getting there, right? Because I'm putting those nutrients on the plant, and even in the Sleeping Buffalo where I didn't apply anything, I'm like, well, am I getting enough microbes? Is things going well? What's happening, right? So you can tell by these cues, right? So when the plant starts getting super healthy, the leaves get really thick. The whole plant is very hairy, and they'll get a waxy coat on them. So you've all seen the waxy coat on your Brachus family, but waxy coat can come on all of them when they get to the level 3 of plant health, that they get that healthy, that there's excess nutrients, and that's where they're putting it, is on the outside the coat of the leaves. The branches will bend on any plant and not break when they're super healthy. Your inner nodes will get really short, and I mean really short. So if you're not at the optimum of photosynthesis, your inner nodes are going to be long, right? And that's where your plants get leggy. You can go ahead and mark. We have a long delay between Hinsdale and Helena.
Yeah.
Smiles. So another thing you can look for is on this pepper plant. You can see the lower leaves are pretty big, and so is the upper leaves. So they should all be the same size. Well, I got to tell you, up until this year, I've never seen that. I've always seen big leaves on the bottom, medium leaves in the middle, and smaller leaves on top, because the plant wasn't able to perform at its top level all the way through its life cycle. And when these peppers started doing this year, and tomatoes, I was just like, wow, I am so down on this thing that it isn't funny. And this plant, this tomato plant on the right there, that's way past the frost, right? I'm cleaning the beds, and this was about at my shoulder height, thickness of that plant stem. And so your plants, when they get healthy, are going to be super, super thick. From the bottom of the plant, from the ground up, all the way up. It's just amazing. You can go ahead and mark. So some other health indicators, of course, is going to be your bricks and your refractometer. Having worms is a really good health indicator. And one thing that's helping me probably meet this, get up this triangle fast, is that I've got a lot of worms and microarthropods and lots of the whole soil food web in my environment. So that's really one of the keys. I think you can't get there if you can't get that whole soil food web working. But here's an example of how those leaves on that, those are young leaves on the broccoli that are that waxy. There's like they're wax inside and out. The leaves will be super thick, like twice as thick as you think is normal when these plants get super healthy. Look at the size of the leaves of those peppers. The leaves are bigger than the fruit, and the fruit was humongous. Another indicator is those, like your spinach and stuff, they're going to grow upright instead of just flat to the ground when they get super healthy. Another health indicator was, and I was pretty shocked at this, right? Because we have a lot of insects and way more birds than normal this year because of all this health and this finally in their 4th year of regenerative agriculture, my beneficial insects decreased. So I'm like, whoa, what is going on? Well, it only made sense, right? There's no pests for them to eat. So their food source had been depleted. So there was very few of them this year. Go ahead, Mark.
Not moving.
Well, maybe we froze up. Okay, there's a look at the package that I got from the bionutrient people. So that was this, the spring blend is just the minerals that are known as missing out of the plants, mostly from John Kemp's plant sap analysis, that they know that those minerals are not plant available. They may be in the soil. And granted, from what I learned from Elaine Hingham, yes, they're in soil, but they're not available for the plant. The plant's not using them. So we provided them. And then that's the liquid feed. And go ahead. Next slide. So one of the very first things you want to do, you can go on to the next slide, is to be able to put on a seed inoculant, a biologic seed inoculant. Now, there was some in this kit from Dan, and I bought the BioCoat Gold and applied that before, and then I applied my own. But I think you can get there without having to have a great compost. You could get there with just the bought ones. And so what you're looking for is to have colonization around those roots just almost instantly. So you can go to the next slide. So there is the soil food web. Those are pictures from my own microscope out of my gardens. You do want to have a large number of microbes and a high diversity of that soil food web to be able to get to these levels. Go ahead, Mark. So I'm doing that with homemade compost, but you can tell if any compost or any soil has got active and healthy microbes working in them is that, see my hand? As soon they glue themselves to it, right? And so you just pick up a handful of soil or compost, rub it a little bit and drop it. Your hand should look like that hand on the right-hand side. If they don't, you don't have that many microbes there. You don't even need a microscope. You just need your hands to figure out, is this good enough? Go ahead. And the taste of the food is just jaw-dropping. I just can't even begin to explain it. That I thought my whole life that I knew what good food tasted like, but it really is far superior this year than any year previous. And the plants are more resilient. The strawberries there I picked last week, right? We were getting down in the 30s and we have had some 20-degree weather for, I don't know, a month and a half. And these strawberries are just producing like crazy. Go ahead. Next slide.
Advance again.
Maybe the computer will cooperate. There's one of the beginning pictures in that greenhouse to give you an idea of what it looks like in the spring. It's got carrots growing in it right now. That's part of, I use the carrots as part of the keep alive root in the ground. So I planted carrots as the under canopy underneath tomatoes and kale. So when these plants get super healthy, the resilience is way high. For instance, this summer squash on the right there, that plant was planted back in the spring, produced all summer long, and it crashed from the cold weather, right? We had several frosts go through the greenhouse and knock down the plants. And I thought, well, you know, all of the tomatoes and squash and cucumbers are dead, right? They should have been at 20 degrees in there, and you'd have thought they'd been deader than a doornail. But this was last week, and I harvested that summer squash. The plant looks like crap, but it's still producing because it was very, very healthy. And the tomatoes had extended harvest too. You can go ahead, next one. There's some of a picture of a little bit of the carrots underneath the kale. And those carrots won't get harvested unless the weather gets super, super cold, which I mean below zero, probably before I have to actually harvest those carrots. I think I can probably cover them up and be good. Go ahead. So that's another example of the leaf size on these healthy plants. That look at the size of that tomato leaf. It's just like, wow. I thought I knew what healthy plants were, but now I do know what healthy plants are. Go ahead. You can probably just go right on through them. There's just some of the production. And we was able to pick a 1 5-gallon bucket every 3 to 4 days off of 4 plants at that Sleeping Buffalo greenhouse for the school. Look at the size of those Roma tomatoes. I never seen anything like it. I was like, wow. Go ahead, Mark. And so that's the results. Healthy plants produce an abundance of healthy food. So you can just leave that slide on, or we can take off the slideshow, I guess, and we can just visit from here on out and see if anybody's got any questions.
Jesus. So Patty, I have a question. So, you know, what do you understand is in these supplements, or whatever the right word, amendments that you purchased that you were not previously creating through your own composting activities?
Yeah, the key micronutrients that takes plants to do photosynthesis, so magnesium, molybdenum, boron. There's several of them. So, you know, those nutrients are in our soils, although they're starting to say now, I mean, every expert that I've talked to says that they can guarantee that we need to put boron on every ounce of soil that we have left in the United States, that everybody needs to apply boron. And boron is like the pump for the plant, right? Think of it as the heart that absolutely is needed to be doing photosynthesis and doing it well. So that was in the micronutrients, the powder mix, and it was the liquid that I applied also. Now I'm not planning to apply next year to really test the theory. The theory is that if you can get the microbes and the minerals, everything there that the plant needs, and the plant can do optimal photosynthesis, that I shouldn't have to keep making any amendments. So that's going to be the test this year. But that was partial the test this year, 2021, because in the Sleeping Buffalo, you know, it's a 24 miles from my house. I was only going there once a week, and I didn't take amendments with me when I went. I probably put amendments on there maybe 3 times all year. But the soil in Sleeping Buffalo is now in its 4th year, right? We're getting ready to go into our 5th year. So that's part of the key, is this doing regenerative practices for 3 years or longer, right? Because at the 3 years, it's kind of like something clicks and the microbes all start working. You get the right amount of microbes in there and things just start happening. And so that's the plan this year, is to go in it with just the mulch cover and the compost that I put on in the fall, and not do these additional amendments. Any other questions?
I think Rob had his hand up.
So
Yeah.
Patty, you probably said it and I missed it, but none of this is heated, or which of your greenhouses are heated?
The passive solar is only heated by passive heat,
Mhm.
right? So it's got
Okay.
barrels in there. The Sleeping Buffalo greenhouse, we didn't run heat this spring, and it's got hot water. It's a hot water well spring, right? So they have it plumbed so that we can run hot water underneath half the beds, but they haven't turned it on until just maybe this week. So we haven't had any additional heat in there. That it's really plant resilience that's getting us where we're at.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I know, it's jaw dropping. And I'm like, I think everybody on the planet needs to know about this. It doesn't matter if we're in the greenhouse or the high tunnel, even though that's super important, right? That's our most expensive square footage that we're growing in, but it happens in the garden too, that it's just like, wow.
Patty, every time I go to the Montana Organic Association conference, they have somebody who's trying to sell silicon as an amendment.
Yes.
Is that legit? I mean, because it seems like the silicon in the soil should be able to be extracted by the microbes.
Yeah, you would think so, but I hear that it really, really does work, and I've started adding it to my compost heat when I make my heat. So, one of those little jars that they sell at the conference there, I add that into the compost when I'm making it. So then those microbes are able to process any mineral that I put into the compost, in the active compost, then they're working that through their systems and stuff for 6 months before it actually goes out onto my property. But if you study John Kemp's sap analysis better, you'll start really understanding that, wow, the sap analysis is telling us, like, right now what the plant has for micronutrients, what it's doing. And they have a soil analysis, a deep mineral soil analysis, so they know, yes, the minerals are there, but they're not in the plant. So they're able to apply these with a liquid, or in my case, I'm just using a drench because I'm a lazy gardener. I just drench it on. But if I was on a big ag operation, I would be spraying it on. But
Patty, there's a question from Sherry. Do you send soil samples to John for the correct mixture of nutrients?
no, I didn't. And this is a blanket mixture that Dan Kitchenridge puts together. And they sell it through their mineral depots. And you can buy it online. He sells it in a small garden kit and a large garden kit, but he's got depots all over the country where you could buy the mix. But if you wanted to go through the procedure that John Kemp is using, and you do the deep mineral analysis and stuff, you want to do that if you've got $10,000 worth of agriculture to deal with. I do not have $10,000 to deal with, so I have not done it myself personally, but the ones that do, they pay for it relatively quickly, because the way I go about it, I'm kind of guessing where they're not guessing, because they know what the plant needs. Any other questions? Todd Shirley's got a question.
I have nothing but questions.
Nothing but them? Okay.
I heard somebody who talked about that Grow Montana silicon or silica based. I guess they were trying to move a bunch of it this fall. So they had a stockpiled in Deer Lodge. So I bought like 10 tons of it. So
Wow, nice.
for like, it's fairly expensive for an amendment. It's about $80 for a 50-pound bag, but they were selling it for $500 a ton if you get it in the big sack. So I stockpiled a bunch, but I have not used it yet. So maybe next year I'll be able to say what the outcome of that was.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think you for sure want to have and I should go get the jar that's got the micronutrients on it, of the key micronutrients that plant needs, any plant needs to do photosynthesis. Because once that plant is doing the photosynthesis well, then it's really taking care of itself. It's driving the whole system.
Right. I did take a screenshot of that bottle that you put up in your presentation, so.
Good.
Yep.
And I think
Patty,
why
just
go ahead, Robin.
just to follow up on that, did you purchase those? And my understanding is you purchased those through Dan Kittredge. Was it from their Bionutrient Association website or from a different website?
No, from their website.
I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it on the website. I just looked while you were talking, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
I just looked it up today. Let's see, what's it called? Their garden mineral kit, maybe. He's got it in 2 different sizes. I bought it right. You had to become a member, and then you was able to buy the kit. So the kit doesn't cost that much. The membership costs a little bit.
Oh, I see.
Maybe that's the thing, is you have to go in as a member to see it.
Yeah, I don't know, but I was able to buy it and get the membership all through the one visit to their website. But he's got mineral depots around the country, you know, to get the same minerals. But if you was to do the mineral analysis of your deep minerals and stuff, then you would know what your particular soil needs, right? Mine might not need all of this stuff, but I put it on because that was what they've deemed as what you would need anywhere in the country that plants need. So
yeah, I think that's the real challenge, is we're all taught that, you know, check your soil sample, but then you realize just because something's in your soil doesn't mean the plant's uptaking it. So really,
right.
I think the big push is now to do tissue sampling, you know, and then to adjust.
Yep. And the sap analysis is one step further, way ahead of the game in the tissue, but the cost of it too is pretty high for a small producer, but for a big farm, it's for sure what I would think I would be wanting to do, right? Because then, you know, I wouldn't have done it in a drought. I wouldn't have done it this year, right? Because you got to, for the sap analysis, you need to have an old plant leaf and a new plant leaf to be able to tell the difference of what's happened in that plant in that couple week period of time or whatever. So then it's kind of like a snapshot of right now, what does this plant need? Keeping the cover on the ground, I think, really helps. At the Sleeping Buffalo, they haven't been very good about following my regenerative practices. They haven't disturbed anything or anything, but they didn't keep the worms watered this winter. So when we went in there this spring, I'm like, wow, we don't have mature worms in here because it was too dry. So we did have worm eggs, and the worms come out of it, you know, by midsummer. But if they had watered more through a little bit somehow and gave them some sort of food source, which they didn't, they cleaned off the beds last fall. That would help, right, with the system. But I don't own this greenhouse, so I'm just a visitor of it.
I think too, if you add, we've been using silage tarps, kind of that whole model a little bit in our tunnels. And I feel like that helps us not have to water for the worms. It just holds it, that tarp prevents you from losing the moisture. So that's an easy way to kind of maintain that soil moisture. Yeah,
I think that's a good move, because in this Sleeping Buffalo greenhouse, you know, it's getting a lot of heat during the day. You know, so those beds really dried out where that you could just literally see cracks all the way down, you know, the sidewalls of the beds. The beds are about 20 inches deep. And so, yeah, it was super dry, but they did come out of it. But the real interesting thing was when we didn't have water for 2 weeks in September, and these plants are in full production. I was still picking every week, and I'm like, wow, I just can't believe this. And so, of course, about the 7th or 8th day, the plants on the edges in the far corners went into major stress, right? Because when they water in there, they're not able to get water in that far bed in the far corner. And that particular bed was a strawberry bed. You know, the whole bed was strawberries. and the back corner of it instantly got aphids and went into that major stress. That one picture that I showed it in the slideshow that looked like it had a little black fungus or whatever on those plants. That was where that was taking place. And it was in the same bed, all one bed, where the plants that were stressed were attacked majorly, and the plants on the other end of the bed where I had went in there and started supplementing water, they had zero pests, zero diseases, and they're still producing right now today. That I'm less like, wow, that the resiliency of those plants to come out of that stress, especially that summer squash, was just dumbfounding to me. So yeah, I'm pretty sold on the idea. And I think we can do this with any plant anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a greenhouse, but we do have to be mindful of what that plant needs for photosynthesis. And so it can do the work itself and take care of its own world.
So Patty, what was your experience this year with grasshoppers in your outdoor production?
Yeah, in my outdoor production, I only had one farm that had any grasshoppers per se. I mean, in my garden, there would be grasshoppers sitting on my plants, but not eating my plants. And so I was like, I've got this thing dialed in at my own place, you know, because I've been doing this composting thing for quite a while. So I know my microbes are really high. So they were just like a casual visitor. I'm like, oh, well, should I pinch him and kill him or just leave him be? Because he's not hurting anything. I'm like, this is amazing. So, and then I got another field that is dry land. So I was trying to do a dry land test. This was not the year to do a dry land test, but I did prove some genetics right off the bat. I'm like, wow, I wiped out some potato genetics right in the get-go. And the others I started watering a little bit, just once a week, not enough water to make them grow, but enough water to keep them from dying. But so the plants were greening and they're mulched everywhere. And the kochia was all along the sides of the beds, and crested wheatgrass on out beyond that. But the landowner likes to keep it clean and pretty, so he mowed the grass, and I'm like, no, don't do that. And so he mowed the grass. So where's the grasshoppers going to go? They have to go to something green, right? So I thought, okay, my potatoes are going to be it. Well, no, they went to the kochia and they ate the annual weeds. They ate them to ground. I let all the weeds grow, and they ate those weeds, but they didn't do hardly any damage to the potatoes whatsoever. And they were getting a weekly dose of this. I did not skip a week on them. I was out there every week giving them a drench of this stuff to make sure that they were healthy enough to see if I could get them strong enough to withstand grasshoppers. We have a high tunnel over there, but it didn't have a sheet on it. So that had tomatoes, cucumbers in there, and no damage from grasshoppers in there whatsoever. But grasshoppers are everywhere, but not on there. No, the only thing I had was deer damage in there on one tomato plant. And so John Kemp says that if the plants get healthy enough that a mammal wants to eat them, then you're at the top of the ball game, right? And so a deer would come and just chomp on the tomatoes off that one plant and ate some green leaves off that plant. And it didn't touch any of the other plants in the growing system, but neither did the grasshoppers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like, I almost should have been filming all year, you know, like this is jaw dropping. Yeah, it was very amazing. But I was really glad that I left the weeds, because I think, you know, then I would have been leaving the grasshoppers no choice. But there was another farmer over there that had potatoes, and he was getting eaten alive by the grasshoppers. And so he finally comes over to me. He says, "What are you doing?" I says, "I'm putting on fish and some micronutrients for my plants to keep them healthier, and then I won't have grasshoppers." He's like, he looks at my plants and they're not getting ate, and his were getting ate. He's like, "Well, where do I get some of that stuff?" And so I gave him some stuff, and he started applying it. And then the grasshoppers started leaving his plants alone after about 3 weeks or so. And he was watering his plants. His plants weren't stressed for water, where I was stressing mine for water, because I was trying to prove potato genetics, because I'm confident that we need to have better genetics that can deal with drought and not have a potato coming from a pivot that's gotten every kind of fungicide and insecticide put on it, and that be my seed stock. I'm like, no, we need to have seed stock that's drought resistant. So I did my own field test, and those potatoes that did produce, those are going to be my seeds moving forward, and see what happens. So that was pretty amazing.
Hey Patty, you mentioned seed inoculation. Do you think, do you need to do that by dipping seed and drying them again? Or do you think you can just plant the seed and then water it over the top with that?
Yep, I just do it in the trench. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Any way that you can get it on when that seed goes down, it doesn't matter, right? In a big ag situation, I would just plant and put it in a drip into the trench. It's like you would a liquid fertilizer or whatever, or drench it right on top, you know. That's what I do in my own garden most of the time, because I don't take the time to go ahead and soak those seeds or whatever. But
that makes it a lot easier, especially if your seeder doesn't want, you don't want to take the time to dry that seed again.
But boy, I don't know if you've seen the slide that had the seedling that had just sprouted, and it was already completely colonized with microbes. Is that is part of the trick, right? Is that now that plant has the microbes already in relationship from day one. In fact, it's from before day one. The microbes are inside the seed before I even treat it. But this extra treatment on the outside is just boosting those numbers and making this relationship that much better. Yeah, I don't plant any seed that doesn't get treated. And it's usually just a watering can for me. I just water right down the trench where I planted. Transplanting, I do a rip ball dip, right? Mm-hmm. Give it all that I can give it, my best stuff. But yeah, definitely will pay off. And it does take some time though, it seems to be a 3-year deal to get the soil food web to really be honed in and going right. And as long as we don't do something to wreck it, right? I don't know about the anything that has too much nitrogen in it is wrecking it, right? Whether if it's our chicken manure or cow manure or whatever it is, I think those need to be very, very small amounts of what we're putting out, because it disturbs it bad enough that like they're taking them out of the game. And so I'm like, well, we need them in the game. Yeah, they're starting to discover.
I just want to remind
the free living bacteria that fix nitrogen are working on all plants, not just the legumes. The legume ones we've just been able to figure out, and we can make more of in the lab, where the others we don't have figured out. There's so many questions that we don't know, that all I was doing was being a helping hand and let nature do it. It did the show. What was your question, Robin?
I was just going to make an announcement, but that actually makes so much more sense. I always wondered why is it just these plants that make the nitrogen? So it never occurred to me they might all. I just want to let people know, on the off chance you don't already know, that the NRCS 2022 Soil Health Symposium is February 9 to 10 in Billings. And Dan Kittredge will be speaking there if you want to go hear him talk.
And Jonathan Lindgren will be there too. And so any ranchers need to be there. We need to get this thing figured out with the dung beetles, because out there on the range, those cows are putting out 12 square foot of manure a day that could be benefiting your soil and your land and getting your water cycle back working. That it's broken as long as we got an insecticide in that manure. So yeah, he should be priceless. We do have a webinar that I'm doing with Dr. Hayes Goosey on Tuesday. I think it's at 6 o'clock. World Wildlife Federation's putting that on. That we want to get the rangers on this thing. We're controlling a lot of land that could be helping us with this water cycle. I think it's truly broken out here, the water cycle. But a little bit of snow this winter is not going to fix our problems here. We got big ones.
Hey Patty, I have a random question. I was at Eco Farm a few years ago, and Jonathan Lundgren was talking about his new research center.
Mhm.
I never followed up with him on it, but he made a statement where he said he would rather do they're talking about tillage. He said, I would rather do one application of Roundup or a systemic, let's just say a general herbicide than one pass of tillage.
Yeah.
In terms of the damage it does to soil. That
Yep.
kind of surprised me, given that Roundup's a biocide.
Yep.
But he must have some research on that. I didn't know if you had it. Would you agree with that statement that herbicide
I do
is?
agree. I do agree with him, and I'm no fan of herbicide, believe me, but I do agree with him. And they've done extensive research that what's happened is if you go through there with a tiller, especially a tiller, and not just a chisel plow or something, but a tiller, you're wiping out all of the microarthropods and nematodes and a lot of the worms. Some of the worms will make it through, but some don't. You're just destroying that upper layer of the soil food web that really makes it work. Right. So then we're down to, we're knocked right back down to bacteria. So then we got to get our bacteria numbers high enough that we can get some protozoa. And so we're just rebuilding where that if we just hit it with a say a glyphosate or whatever, that's a one-time thing. We knock it down. Sure, we're going to knock out some mycorrhizal, but it's going to be able to recover from it as long as it's that one time, and especially if you can get a low dose, like Nicole Masters has got these guys figuring out to put on way lower dose. That I think all of those people that I've been learning from would agree with that statement. And John Kemp believes that tilling's not that bad, but he's talking about just the soil surface tilling. And if you could just do the soil surface tilling, then you got that whole soil food web still intact down below of it.
Right, so it can recolonize. I guess I never knew how deep, if they did studies of how deep an herbicide like Roundup penetrates into the soil microbiome, if it's just superficial or if it gets down deeper.
I don't know that for sure. Yeah, sure on that.
I guess it surprised, but that statement surprised me. I was like, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As an organic grower, it's not a question really, but.
Right. Yeah. From the farms I've been out on, our biggest problem is compaction. Yeah. That we've been running these air drills for 40 years now, and they literally, you're not farming the top 2 inches because the sun is baking it and those microbes are not there. That's why we're having so much trouble with this wind erosion and water erosion, is those microbes are just out of the game. You got a few bacteria there, but that's it. So then you go down to the next part, your shovel on your air drill might be only 6 inches deep. So now we're down to maybe 4 inches of real soil that we might function in, because where that shovel is hitting the ground, we are compacted like concrete, and it's full of excess fertilizers and salts and crap. And I was like, wow, you pull up any plant out there and the plants are going down, and then they go out because they're like, oh, we're not going to grow in that salty stuff. And so they're growing sideways. So they're literally growing in 3 inches of soil. In Montana, we can't keep doing that. That's crazy. That's crazy. So we got to get that compaction fixed. And I think they're going to have to do that, with for sure getting the calcium magnesium thing figured out and get some air in there, right? Even if we've got to go back and rip that, right? If we rip it once, fix the mineral problems, and then get the microbes working in there instantly with a live plant, they could have the problems fixed. We gotta want to work on them though.
Rip and drip, as Nicole would say.
Yeah. That's right. Any other questions? Is there any in the chat? I haven't looked at the chat. How are we doing, Mark?
Well, Patty, I'm trying to paste information from that messenger note that you sent me regarding the ranching with dung beetles and beaver and so on. And the links aren't all working apparently. So if you have a better link.
Can I just share that with Robin? I shared it with Arrow today. You want me to try to find it? I
Oh,
can
we,
find it.
all I, it's, you know, we can talk about this offline. All I have is the Zoom link, which is fine, but I was looking for something that had some description. But we can talk about that offline. I
that'll
do
be good.
recognize we're at 6.
6 o'clock, 6:30.
Yeah.
No, we're at,
Yeah. So we have reached the end of our time, but it's been really interesting and I've learned a lot. And maybe we folks, if you want to go out to the Arrow Facebook page, I think Patty said that she has posted that information there, but we'll make sure that we share it again if necessary. I want to thank Patty for presenting. This was really wonderful. And I want to thank everyone else for attending and for such great questions and dialogue and interaction and everything. Again, just a short and sweet reminder, if you'd like to donate to Arrow, we can put a link and we would very much appreciate that. And maybe just all unmute and say goodbye and thanks to Patty.
thank you, Patty.
Thanks,
You're
Patty. It was
welcome.
wonderful.
Thank you, Patty.
Cool. Well, I just want to help people, and I know we can do this. So let's just get to doing it.
Thank
Very
you.
inspiring.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Cool. Have a good evening.
Good
Night
night.
night.
Night, everyone.
I'm working on copying the chat, so I'll be here for a second.
Oh yeah, no problem. Did we get the right link in there for the dung beetles?
I think not. I think folks are going to need to go to the Arrow Facebook page. I mean, you can take a look at it, but apparently the link doesn't work. I didn't try it myself.
And Mark, I've got the chat too if you need it.
Hey, Patty,
Oh, great.
Yes.
Okay.
do you know, does Dan's Mineral Depots, does he deal with like commercial quantities of things, or is he more small scale, like garden?
Yeah,
style?
they've got depots. I tried to talk to the guy down in Colorado. I thought he was the closest one to us.
Okay,
And they have stuff by the tons, they have it in 50-pound bags and different stuff, The big thing is knowing, you need tiny amounts of this and tiny amounts of that. And that's
what
why I
was
would,
thinking.
because
I
I'm like,
looked at
I
the
know.
ingredients. I looked at the ingredients. Some of them I've used like individually. Some of them I have not used. I'm familiar, but to have a blended product.
Yeah.
is
No, I
enticing.
used on my own garden, not in the greenhouse, but in my own garden, I use John Kemp's products because he sells the same things just in different jugs, and so they come in a lot larger quantities and stuff.
Okay, so he sells products too.
Yeah. So Dan's was all in one bottle, and John's would have been in 3 different bottles. Is why I went, because I wanted to mimic what an everyday gardener or market gardener would probably do to get to test it, to get going. And so that's why I went with Dan's. Is so much simpler and anybody could do it, but On John's, yeah, it's just 3 products that you would, plus the BioCoat Gold, which is the seed inoculant.
All right, I'm gonna check it out.
And he's got some new stuff out there that would really help market gardeners. So
Cool.
he did a webinar that cuts the corners through some of this stuff, and where you know, because he knows a lot of those people aren't going to be able to test. And so he had one